Hi everybody, Joe Cioffi on this what turned out to be a beautiful Wednesday of weather here in my neck of the woods, which is in southeastern New York State. Actually, that's where literally I am sitting right now in southeast Westchester County, not too far north of New York City. My forecast area is usually from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, including New York City, New Jersey, Long Island, the Philadelphia. Occasionally you'll reach down into the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area if conditions warrant, and also up into the Hudson Valley in Connecticut. And today we've got a lot going on as we get closer and closer to the holiday weekend. To the left, I have the satellite loop up of the system that we're watching down in the tropics, that the Hurricane Center is now rating at a 60% chance of developing into a tropical cyclone over the next 5 days, particularly over this weekend. But one of the things we have noticed during today is an increase in thunderstorm activity throughout the northwestern Caribbean. There is a very broad, weak low that is sitting just east of the coastline of the Yucatan Peninsula, and there are also some strong upper air winds that will impede development for now. But this system is going to be headed into the Gulf of Mexico, and I think this stands a fairly good chance of getting at least to tropical depression, if not tropical storm. The most important takeaway that we've been emphasizing in all of this is the fact that this system is going to produce some widespread, very heavy rains later this weekend, and particularly next week, across much of the eastern and central Gulf states. And the rain could be on the order of many inches. This is going to get hung up in the atmosphere to some degree, and we're going to talk about that now. So I'm going to bring up, we'll bring up the paint box, and I'll make sure it's sitting up in the front now so that you can see what's going on. And at the moment, we notice that there is an outbreak of some showers and thunderstorms. There's a lot of tropical moisture that's been stuck up here, and as a result, we're seeing shower and thunderstorm activity develop every afternoon in a few places. This is not part of the tropical system, the soon-to-be perhaps tropical system, but there is an upper trough that is going to develop in the central Gulf states, and this upper trough is going to be key in the forecast going forward. We're going to zoom down a little further south so you can take a look at the bottom part of this satellite view, and you'll notice that we have seen very much an increase in thunderstorm activity today. I think the Hurricane Center will likely acknowledge this in their discussion tonight, just a guess on my part, but this is the area that has kind of blossomed today. If we had to put a low center someplace, I would probably guess that it's maybe right about here, just kind of sitting there. It really needs to clear the Yucatan Peninsula and find its way up into the Gulf of Mexico, which I think it's going to do over the next 2 or 3 days. It's going to move very, very slowly. It'll probably make it into the open waters of the south central Gulf or the southeastern Gulf sometime early on Saturday, and then move slowly northward. I'm kind of favoring the European model view of this, and the Canadian, the Icon model. They all seem to suggest that the structure of the upper low will be such that this thing should wind up moving northward. There is a problem, however, with regards to this going forward, and I want to take a look at that, and we're gonna bring up the I'm going to start to bring up the European upper air. So we'll show you here. So this is the situation down in the Gulf of Mexico, and actually does lead to a difference in this versus the GFS, which has a weaker cutoff low. When I'm talking about the cutoff low, I'm talking about this upper air feature right in here. The issue is, and it's an important one, because you are going to be in a situation where this system is going to be trapped You've got an upper high, and I'm going to draw it in here in blue, the edge of the upper high sitting over the Bahamas and extends out into the Atlantic, way out into the Atlantic by hundreds and hundreds of miles. We have a strong ridge off the southeast coast of the United States. You also have a strong ridge back through Mexico south and west that's building on northward up through Texas and Oklahoma and into Kansas. So this upper low, this trough, is kind of stuck in between, and one of the other problems is the northern part of the jet stream. It is not cooperating here. The northern part of the jet stream is only getting so far south, and that's it. And after that, it's kind of in no man's land. So as far as our weather is concerned, which, when I'm talking about that, I'm saying, for my neck of the woods. So as far as this area is concerned, it probably means that anything that comes out of the tropics is going to have a tough time getting that moisture northward as long as that northern jet is in the way. This is the forecast, by the way, for Sunday. Now, I'm going to jump to Tuesday, and you'll notice that that upper low is really not that far from where it was 48 hours before. It's sitting probably right over southeastern Louisiana. So there's probably going to be some kind of remnant surface low around here somewhere. I think this is going to mean for a very slow-moving system, a prolonged period of heavy rains that are going to impact, I believe, areas. Oh, let me get a circle going here. I think this is going to mean a prolonged period of heavy rains throughout the Gulf states and into, and possibly including Florida. I don't know how far west this is all going to get, but certainly the central and eastern Gulf states are going to be getting some heavy rainfall through at least the middle part of next week and maybe even a little bit beyond that. What may happen in Florida is that you may wind up getting bands of moisture that are going to come around the surface low, and those bands may occasionally find themselves, along or just inland of the Florida west coast, or even a few down along the east coast. This depends. It's going to depend on just exactly what we're dealing with in terms of a tropical system here. Is it going to develop into a tropical storm? Is it going to stay weak and with a broad area of low pressure? It ultimately does not make a difference in terms of what the outcome is with regards to rainfall, because I think you're going to wind up with many areas getting 5, 6, 7, 8 inches of rain, maybe some places getting some local amounts of 10, 11, or 12 inches of rain out of this when it plays out next week. But we got to see exactly what we're dealing with first before we get too worked up with all of this. And as far as what's happening this afternoon, you can see the radar across the southeastern states is pretty busy. We've got some patchy areas of showers and thunderstorms. Florida's getting a little bit of a break. We've got some shower and thunderstorm activity going on in parts of southwest Florida, but we don't have widespread activity happening today, since the bulk of that is from Cuba on southward. There's also some activity showing up off the coast near and north of the Keys. So, unusual that we are seeing the possibility of a tropical system for the Memorial Day holiday weekend. I have to tell you, thinking back in my memory, this may be the first time that I can remember that we would actually have a tropical system in play for the Memorial Day holiday weekend. You're certainly have a bit of a better chance to see one running around in the 4th of July. But even on the 4th of July, and the days surrounding it, you don't often have a tropical system running around. Labor Day is another story. That's the one where you're likely to have at least one hurricane running around somewhere. But yeah, this is really strange. And of course, the fact is that of all the holiday weekends for my neck of the woods, the Memorial Day holiday weekend is always the one that's the most problematic. It's the one that sits squarely in the spring month of May. It is still the spring season, subject to the spring volatility that is always a problem, and the marine influence with the colder ocean, always an issue here in the springtime. So it means for variability, and we're going to see temperatures on Saturday with nice weather from now right through the daytime Saturday, probably getting up close to 90, and then Sunday and Monday in many areas it may not even get out of the 60s. So there you have it. Now, here's the visible satellite view from right through late this afternoon. Skies have cleared out just about everywhere. We've got all this dry air that's coming down from the Great Lakes and eastern Canada. And by the way, this time of year, that air is not all that cool. The sun, the lengthening daylight, and so on, that air gets heated up during the daytime. So we are going to see temperatures that are going to be climbing up well into the 70s to near 80 for Thursday, and then 80s on Friday and 80s to near 90 on Saturday, even though I think the humidity is probably going to remain relatively tame through Friday, maybe start coming up a bit on Saturday. Not too much happening for severe weather yet, but I just want to show you, at least from the standpoint of the severe weather risk today, we actually do now have 2 severe thunderstorm watch boxes that have just gone up for parts of western South Dakota, western Nebraska, southeastern Montana, eastern Wyoming. We've also got another severe thunderstorm watch box that is up for eastern New Mexico down into parts of West Texas, and you can see how the Storm Prediction Center has those 2 large areas of slight risk indicated. Also a small area of marginal risk in eastern North Carolina, southeastern Virginia, with some thunderstorms rolling through there. The storms that are going on through the Gulf states really are the big problem with these storms, is that they could be big rain producers. They don't seem to be ones that you'll probably get too much in the way of severe weather out of them. So let's jump to tomorrow, where we do have a slight risk of severe weather for Thursday in the northern plains, much of the eastern half of Nebraska on up into eastern South and North Dakota, the northwestern half of Minnesota. If you cut it on a diagonal, you can see the marginal risk surrounding that. So that's our area for Thursday, of course. And of course, where I am tomorrow, it's just going to be a spectacular day. So no thunderstorms at all to worry about for the Northeast and for the Mid-Atlantic states for Thursday. So why don't we bring up the models and see where we're going with this. I want to first focus in on the tropical system, and we're going to start with the NAM model. We will also bring in the region that it'll be impacting here, so you can take a look. The NAM is actually lined up pretty well with the European, and if you look now, we are at into tomorrow morning. You're starting to see a little bit of convective activity showing up in the Gulf of Mexico, but it really isn't until later Friday and into Saturday that you start to see low pressure slowly emerging into the Gulf, and it's fairly well defined. It actually deepens the pressure down into the under 1,000 millibars, into the 990s. And the radar structure that it's depicting at this point, this is at Saturday evening, does kind of, the radar presentation that the NAM is showing does kind of have that tropical storm look to it. Area of convection seemed to be concentrating closer to a circulation center. The bottom line is, I think, maybe it does become a tropical storm. Maybe it does. We get a name out of the way, and maybe it gets up to 45 or 50 miles an hour in wind. I don't know. I'm kind of guessing, openly speculating at this point. But the real issue is going to be the rain that's going to come out of this for Sunday. And by the way, one of the things that will happen is if this system does develop, initially there will be some subsidence that will go on, sinking of the air across the Gulf states. So that may actually diminish thunderstorm activity as this system develops and moves northward. So there may be a little bit of a reprieve from the rain for a day or so across the Gulf states until the tropical system moves in. But let me show you the problem here. This goes back to the European, in that there's your surface low on the European. You see how well it matches up with the NAM model? So that, to me is pretty encouraging with regards to favoring the Europeans track over the GFSs, which still wants to take this into and across Florida and moving it north and northeastward. But the upper low is the way it's structured on the European, to me, makes more sense. Watch the surface low here. This is Sunday morning, where it looks like we've got probably a tropical storm southeast of New Orleans in the Gulf of Mexico. It never moves inland. It kind of drifts westward at this point. This is at Monday morning. This is Tuesday morning. It is still offshore and then finally moves inland sometime later Tuesday into Tuesday night or Wednesday. If this scenario plays out, we're talking big rains here for the central and eastern Gulf states. I'm thinking that the rain shield will probably cut off to the west of there, that it'll be more central and east and not really get into Texas, probably staying east of there if the European is correct. And it also would suggest that all the tropical moisture that's generated from this is not going to have an impact on the weather in the Northeast through the holiday weekend. I think that's a pretty safe bet here. So back we go. I'm going to now go over to the GFS and show you the difference. And here's, I don't know why the GFS continues to want to take this thing up into the west coast of Florida. It has not budged an inch from this view, and we are now, this is not that far out into the long range. It's at 78 hours, and it's still got it there, whereas the European has it. This is Sunday morning on the GFS. Now it does, you kind of notice it takes it northward and then turns it westward. So it's sort of does what the European does, except it's about 4 degrees further to the east than the European. And I think that really has to do with how the GFS sees this upper feature. And then eventually it just kind of leaves the low there and you start to shoot up some tropical moisture up the coast. The actual surface low just sort of gets left behind. It has the same idea of big rains, just has it a little bit further to the east. I still think the European and the Icon model have the better idea on this, and the NAM, because the NAM is going the way of those other two models. The GFS, I think, is probably too far east with everything. Now, with regards to the weather in my area, we are, as we said, through Saturday, it's fine. We've got high pressure off the east coast, a west wind, dry air, we're good. Saturday night, we get a backdoor front that drops southward. You can see it here across upstate, moving from upstate New York down to the coast during Saturday night. There might be a shower or thunderstorm with that. And then because that front is kind of hanging around right through Sunday and Monday, you can't rule out the possibility of some passing showers. I don't think it's a washout, but we're going to be in the 80s to near 90 on Saturday, probably only in the mid-60s to mid-70s Sunday, and maybe mid-60s to near 70 on Monday. A lot is going to depend on cloud cover. That's going to be important in terms of determining the temperatures. But if you got to decide on a beach day, Saturday is the one. Here's the upper air on the GFS model, and again, here's the northern jet. I'm just backed it up to the beginning of the week here, and there's our upper low for Sunday. It's further east than the European is. This is the GFS's view of the upper low. Here is the European's view of the upper low. The upper low is cut off and further west. Looks to me like the European has a much stronger ridge off the southeast coast of the United States. I kind of want to respect the European, showing that usually it's the GFS that wants to keep ridges off the east coast a bit too strong, and The fact that the European has got that and the GFS doesn't, it kind of leads me to think that maybe the European is going to be better on this. Both models have that northern jet, but you can see the difference here. I'll show it to you again. Here's the GFS, and then here's the European. I'm sorry. Okay, so that's the GFS. So here's the European on the upper air. You see how you just look in the Gulf of Mexico, and you can see the difference in where the upper low is on the GFS model versus the European, and that's the reason why we're seeing the differences. The Canadian model, by the way, kind of the same. Maybe it geographically splits the difference between the European and the GFS, but the Canadian's got a wrapped up, very deep system that I still do not believe it would get as strong as the Canadian has it. I'll spare you the curiosity here, and you can see it here. It's got a much more wrapped up tropical storm that goes into the Florida Panhandle, but it also still has this notion of it slowing down to a crawl. And remember last year with Harvey sat basically between an upper ridge on one side and an upper ridge on the other, and there was no mechanism to get it kicked out. So I think this is important for the folks in the Gulf states to pay attention because rain is going to be the big deal. Now here's the rainfall. Now if you want to compromise the two models in terms of total rainfalls, this is the Canadian's view, which kind of splits the difference between the GFS and the European. The European would have the western edge of that rainfall of the, if you look, here's the scale to the side, the darker reds, and you start to get in the oranges and yellows, and we're talking, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 inches of rain. So you do have some pockets here, a large area of forecast 6-inch plus rains over the next week, and some pockets of 8, 9, or 10 inches. The European was just as bullish, just that the western edge, instead of being, the whitish area is about 2 inches. So as the western edge is maybe in southeastern Mississippi, on the European, that western edge was back in southeast Texas, western Louisiana, and you had those the larger area of many inches extending further to the west, and then lower amounts to the east as you just kind of shift it along. So the Canadian sort of provides the compromise between the two. I'm thinking that this western, that we're going to have the Europeans' idea a bit further to the west. I would think the GFS would probably start showing that shift toward the European really soon, since we are inside 70, 84 hours here. But model seems to be very stubborn about it. I don't want to completely rule it out. It's so early in the season, and there's got to be a lot of different variables that are at play here that I'm just not sure of yet. So I don't have the hands-on experience of seeing a tropical system in late May in the Northwest Caribbean, South, and Gulf of Mexico. I'm kind of trying to rack my brains out as to the last time we even had a tropical system running around for the Memorial Day holiday weekend. And I said this earlier. I can't think of anything. Maybe Anthony Orr can refresh my memory, but I'm at a loss at this point. Aaron Ray Bear, thank you so much for hitting Super Chat tonight. I really appreciate it. And yeah, all the models seem to want to wrap the upper low around the surface development. I think that's a common thread through all three of them. It's a matter of positioning and structure, I believe, with regards to where this is going to wind up. But certainly, folks along the central and eastern Gulf states and Florida should pay attention, with the emphasis here being on heavy rain. Timothy Veltman, what's the deal with Newfoundland? Heard they're getting a decent storm. Okay, you know what? My mind has been so non-Canadian at this point. I've been kind of focused on the tropics. I haven't really given it a good look, but let me take a look and see what's going on. And of course, here we go. Things are slowing up a bit in here. I got to change regions. All right, I'm going to do this off camera and just describe it to you first, and then there is, well, there was a low. There's a storm that's going by south of Newfoundland. They're actually getting some snow across parts of Newfoundland today in the interior. And that's moving away to the northeast. There's been some late season snow going on across parts of southeastern Canada. And then there's another system coming in later next week that actually shows even some snow out of that. So rather unusual, Timothy. You know, I mean, eventually it has to warm up there also. I mean, I don't know what their normal snowfall is for the latter part of May, but I gotta believe it's not that high. And a cup of no Joe for me, a cup of no for Joe. Yes, I totally agree. Israel, the Euro still showed the same track as yesterday. Yeah, it's a little further south. It keeps it in the Gulf of Mexico longer off the Louisiana coast. When we're done, go back and replay the video. I went into it in such incredible detail, I have to say. South Carolina, Javon Johnson. You're going to get some of that tropical moisture feed in there, folks. You probably get some shower and thunderstorm activity, but I would think you probably would have gotten it anyway, just with the upper low. So whether, you know, unless we get something like the GFS has, which takes it more to the east, which would probably bring more of that tropical moisture up into the southeastern part, particularly up your way, then yes, you would get some tropical storm-related rain, if assuming it develops into one. But you know, right now we're favoring the idea that this is going to track further west, a la the NAM and the European. Just making sure. You're coming home tomorrow, Aaron Raybear. If you're coming home in my neck of the woods. It's going to be beautiful tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday's the beach day, for sure. That's what I would recommend. There might not even be that much of a sea breeze on Saturday. Is that a tornado warning for Albuquerque? Okay, let me check. See what's going on. You know, they are in that risk of severe weather. Whoa, they might have one. Let's take a look. I just pulled up the National Weather Service. Not. Hang on. There's one tornado warning out at the moment. It is not for Albuquerque, though. It's for Lincoln and West Central Chavez counties. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. They don't mention what cities. This is from the National Weather Service in Albuquerque. It's actually, looks like it's Roswell is in it. Roswell, New Mexico, you know, where all the UFOs are hidden. I had to throw that in. Yeah, they're under a tornado warning there in Roswell, not in Albuquerque. Raymond, you want me to call severe weather for Saturday? The Storm Prediction Center doesn't have too much going on for Saturday as far as severe weather risk at this point. But on the other hand, I would, I would be a little cautious on that, if only because of the fact that they've been having to kind of upgrade the risks as we've gotten closer to the event. But as I'm looking for Friday, there's nothing, obviously. And for days 4 to 8, predictability is too low. So right now, they're not seeing anything, but that doesn't necessarily mean that when we get inside the day 3 and the day 2 period, that they may start going to a marginal risk or a slight risk of severe weather. Beach does sound like a plan. I agree. You know, Saturday is my one day this weekend where I'm going to have some time. So I think my plan of attack is to do a little fishing in the morning, and then maybe a little beach going in the afternoon or later in the afternoon. The secret is to go to the beach down my way after 6 o'clock, because then you don't have to pay the $10 entry fee, or I'll just go to one of the town beaches. So anyhow, let's leave it at that. We are going to have the Joe and Joe show tonight at 9:15. So at that point, we will have the latest from the Hurricane Center, and we'll review what they have to say, and we'll take a look at whatever new stuff we've got with regards to the models. And I'm sure Joe has his opinions on what's going to happen. If you can't be on my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Cioffi for the Joe and Joe show, you can watch it here on YouTube, because I will more than likely, barring any technical issues, I will upload that show to YouTube late this evening, probably sometime between 9:45 and 10 o'clock. Fingers crossed that I can get it done before 10. Otherwise, it may have to wait till between 11:30 and midnight. But I promise you, it will be up on the YouTube channel tonight. A few posts on the website. You can check those out, meteorologistjoecioffi.com. And that's pretty much it. And just want to mention, you can, of course, thank you, Aaron Raybear, again, for hitting Super Chat. You can support my channel that way if you'd like. But do not feel obligated. It's there if you'd like to use it, and definitely appreciate it when I can pick up a cigar for myself. And also another way, which doesn't cost you a dime, there's a link to Amazon on the descriptor to this live stream and on my video channel, and you can, if you make purchases on Amazon from that link, you don't have to buy what's on the recommended list, but if you buy something that you were planning to buy anyway, Amazon throws me back some coin, and everybody's happy, and I'm really thankful if you do that. So thank you very much ahead of time. Priscilla Mayu, you just got on board, and I'm just kind of wrapping things up here, but at least we've got some nice weather. If you're on the Gulf Coast, got to watch that system coming into the Gulf of Mexico. We're going to be talking about that again tomorrow and on Friday, I'm sure. So we'll be looking ahead. And by the way, I used to work in New Orleans. I was back in 1983 to 1986. I worked with Bob Breck, who is now retired. A great guy. Haven't seen him in years. I did talk to him last week when he found out I got a grandbaby. It brings back wonderful memories. New Orleans is just an absolutely terrific city. If you haven't visited it, it's a wonderful, wonderful place. You can have a whole lot of fun. The music, the food, oh my God, the food, it's just incredible. I haven't been there in a long, long time, many years, but one of these years I'm going to get back there. All right, folks, let's call it a night. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Stay well, and hopefully we'll see you tonight on the Joe and Joe Show, the Joe and Joe Weather Show on Facebook at 9:15.